JB here. The wolf is in the house for Whiteboard Wednesday. It's the first Whiteboard Wednesday since my dad passed away last week. I'm sure he's watching me right now, saying he loves Whiteboard Wednesday. My dad was awesome, from the movie. He was Mad Max. Great guy, right? May he rest in peace. Let's get to it. I want to talk about, I want to instruct you, seriously, this is instruction on what I consider to be like the linchpin for someone improving in sales, for whatever you are, but especially for those people who are, I guess beginners or not professional salespeople. I think professional salespeople know this, and maybe some don't, but there's a thought, an idea that sort of is the benchmark for everything else in sales, and that is what is really happening when someone goes from saying, let me think about it, let me call you back, bad time, yeah. What happens when someone goes from one of those to saying, yeah, let's do it? Someone's on the fence, changes their mind, says, yes, let's do it. And I think that what happens with a lot of people who have trouble selling, they don't really know what causes a person to do that. What mechanically happened in that prospect's mind that made them change it. So let me give you a visual here, and I'm the world's worst artist, so I'm going to give it a crack here. And I have something I used to illustrate this called the scales. So imagine this is a beam there, right? One of those old-fashioned scales, right? And you have in the middle a fulcrum. This is your fulcrum, this is your beam, right? And right here, right? This is your center, it's in the center, right? So at rest with no weights on either side, right? The scale should be balanced, right? When someone enters into a sales encounter, remember this. They enter in with preconceived notions. No matter what you're selling, cars, insurance, real estate, information products, consumer goods, doesn't matter what it is. People, prospects, they enter the encounter with ideas already formed about the product. And maybe not your product, but your type of product. For instance, when someone goes and shops for cars, before they walk into a dealership and look at any particular car, well, they know what cars do, what cars they like, what problems they've had in the past, what they might have heard about your car or just cars in general, what are salespeople who sells cars like, what are the dealers like. We have preconceived notions for everything we are about to buy. So imagine when you enter into, we'll use a car dealership, right? And it can be anything, right? And you enter in and you have these sort of logical reasons why you're going to buy now. You have certain reasons why, right? Based on you have certain needs, you've heard certain things, you have this preconceived notion. And you also enter with logical reasons not to buy now, okay? And by the way, there might be 5 of these. LN, reasons not to buy now. LBN, to buy now, right? And then you also have emotional reasons why you should buy and not buy. In other words, we always have positives and negatives when we go to buy something. Before we even, we walk in the door, we're like, all right, we have these sort of ideas in our head, what's good about it, what's bad about it, right? And most of the time, we don't really know that much about what we're about to buy, and the job of the salesperson is to educate us. They tell you things about the product. They go over the features. They explain what benefits those features give you. So what happens is as the sale progresses, and I use a straight line always for the say, this is your open, this is your close, right? As the sale progresses, the salesperson keeps saying things, doing things, showing you maybe testimonials, showing you brochures. They show you things that keep increasing your reasons to buy now, and at the same time, they knock out your reasons not to buy now. So as the sale progresses, they keep building up the positives, knocking out negatives, building up positives, knocking out negatives, right? And at a certain point in time, what happens is when these negatives outweigh the positives enough, the scale drops and the person says yes. Make sense? In other words, it's when someone says, let me think about it, what it really is someone saying, I still have too many concerns, too many negatives, unanswered questions, right? I don't know enough. Those are all negatives. And as the salesman does his or her thing, you are knocking these out. You're knocking these out. And at the same time, you're building up the positives. And boom, the scale drops, right? Very simplistic way to look at what happens when someone goes from saying, let me think about it, to saying yes. But there's more to this too. The other thing that most people miss with selling is that this fulcrum here isn't always in the middle. See, when the fulcrum is in the middle, that means that you're like kind of, yeah, you're at, if you have 10 positives and 10 negatives in your mind, then they kind of balance, they cancel each other out, and you're not going to buy, but they're balanced in the middle, right? So 10 negatives, 10 positives, you're fine. You're not going to buy, but you're right in the middle, right? You're sitting on the fence. But there are certain people like me who are born buyers. I'm a sucker. I buy everything, right? So what happens in my case is the beliefs I have about buying are such that my fulcrum is not in the middle. My fulcrum is over here. So when I'm actually giving weight to my negatives, let's say I have 10 negatives and 10 positives. But because of my beliefs about buying and making decisions, my fulcrum's here. Guess what? These 10 negatives, they don't exert that much force on my buying decision. And the 10 positives, bam, they make massive differences in my decision. Since my fulcrum over here means a little bit of positives will offset a lot of negatives. That's someone who's very easy to sell to. We call it having a low action threshold, meaning before I take action and say, yes, I'll buy, I don't have to be that certain. I can still have seeds of doubt, negatives, and not all the positives lined up. Conversely, if someone like my father, his fulcrum is over here. May he rest in peace, right? My dad was one of the toughest people in the world to sell to. What does that mean? He could have 12 positives why he should be buying now. If he has one nagging negative, it's enough power. It exerts, the power is essentially amplified because of his beliefs about buying, about making decisions, how he processes the world around him, his implicit trust or distrust in people. In other words, when you have someone like me you're trying to close, my fulcrum is over on the negative side. Get me reasonably certain, I'll buy. So like my dad, he's over here. You have to make him absolutely certain and damn sure of it. Now, why is that important? Well, the first step to closing more sales and making more money, no matter what you do, and this goes for negotiation as well, it could be selling anything, just persuasion, is understanding what you have to do to get someone to say yes. That's what salespeople do. We don't turn no's into yeses. We turn let me think about it into yeses. Let me call you backs into yeses. That's what's happening. And there are two ways you attack that. The first way is by saying things, doing things, showing them information, brochures, emails, testimonials, and those things are all designed to build up positives and knock out negatives. That's what you're doing. The second thing you're also doing is attacking the position of the fulcrum. There are certain language patterns that we can use. There's certain groups of words we could put together. We call them language patterns, right? Where you could actually temporarily take someone who has a very high action threshold, like my dad, meaning the fulcrum's over here. You could temporarily lower that threshold and close the deal. So I'm not going to get specific today. This is just an overarching principle. Just remember that when you're selling, when you're persuading, when you're negotiating, right, there's these two things that are happening simultaneously. Number one, what's the positives versus the negatives? What's that equation look like? And you better be doing things and saying things to essentially knock out negatives, build on positives. Simultaneously, you want to be using certain strategies that allow you to essentially lower someone's action threshold by moving the fulcrum over to the left. two ways. Number one, primary ways. One is through language patterns, and the other is through adding on pain. Separate training here. But that's your overarching thought for the day. Remember this when you're selling. You're not just dealing with positives and negatives. There's also this force. How much force does one negative exert on a person's buying decision? With me, one negative doesn't exert that much force. With my dad, the opposite. Make sense? All right, and we'll get more specific in the Whiteboard Wednesdays to follow. I love you all. Subscribe to Whiteboard Wednesdays. It's great information, and it's also free. And also, by the way, check out the link below about the straight line system. You got to check out the new system I created. I have an upgrading version, which is a certification training. You got to check it out. Click on the link here. Believe me, you'll be glad you did. Take care, and see you next Wednesday.